The stars were no longer the comforting lights they once were, nor did they promise hope as they had before the great calamity. A quiet darkness now stretched across the galaxy, its cold fingers gripping every corner of known space. The once thriving intergalactic alliance, of which Earth had been a central pillar, had crumbled under the weight of betrayal, a betrayal from within their very ranks. Entire star systems were lost, worlds reduced to smoldering remnants of their former selves, and countless lives snuffed out in the blink of an eye. On Earth, Captain Alina Voss sat in the dimly lit war room of the Nighthawk, the flagship of the human fleet. The command center was eerily quiet as holographic displays flickered around her, showcasing the wreckage of the galaxy, showing planets that had been swallowed by black holes or consumed by the Voidborn, an alien race whose hunger for power had led them to tear apart the very fabric of reality itself. "Captain, we've intercepted an unknown signal." Lieutenant Kell's voice broke through her thoughts, startling her. He stood by the communications station, his expression unreadable. "It's old, but it's coming from a deep sector. It's a distress call." Voss glanced at the coordinates flashing on the screen. The sector was one of the most dangerous, a place where entire fleets had vanished without a trace. The Voidborn were known to lurk in the dark corners of such territories, using fear and confusion as weapons to hunt down those foolish enough to venture too far. But there was something else in the signal, a pattern, a sequence that seemed intentional. "What's the source?" "We've been able to trace it to a derelict station near the last known location of the Elder Phoenix, a former Earth vessel that disappeared years ago." "It doesn't make sense. The ship was reported lost, but there's no record of it ever being found." Cale hesitated, eyes narrowing as he focused on the readings. This could be a trap. Voss was silent for a long moment. The distress call could be a ruse, a trick to lure them into a Voidborn ambush. But there was something about the coordinates that piqued her curiosity, something familiar. She didn't believe in coincidences. A memory stirred in her mind, buried deep within the archives of her thoughts. Elder Phoenix. She recalled the whispers of a long-forgotten mission, a mission that had been abandoned just before the war began. "We're going," she said, her voice firm with resolve. "Prepare a scouting party. If it's a trap, we'll deal with it. If it's something more, we need to know what it is before the Voidborn do." Within hours, the Nighthawk was en route to the coordinates, its engines humming with a power that had long been silent, the ship now a ghost of its former self. Voss gazed out the bridge's viewport, her eyes locked on the swirling darkness ahead. The silence felt suffocating, almost like a warning. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a mere rescue mission. The captain's gut told her that something buried deep within this mission would hold the key to humanity's survival or its final undoing. As the Nighthawk drew closer to the derelict station, the bridge crew fell into a tense silence. The gravity of the unknown hung over them, and every passing second felt like a countdown. They were about to venture into the heart of the galaxy's ruin, where even the bravest had fallen. "Prepare for boarding," Voss ordered, her eyes never leaving the dark, abandoned station now looming in front of them. "Let's find out what's hiding in the shadows." The rest of the crew moved quickly to execute the orders. Alina felt her pulse quicken, an unshakable sense of anticipation rising within her. No matter what lay ahead, she was determined to face it head-on. The galaxy might be broken, but Earth still had something to say about it. And that something, she hoped, was a future. The Nighthawk docked with the station, and Alina stepped into the docking bay, flanked by her most trusted officers. The air inside the station was cold, its silence deafening. The lights flickered above them, casting eerie shadows across the hallways. As they moved deeper into the bowels of the structure, Alina couldn't help but feel that they were no longer just searching for answers. They were walking into something much larger, something that could change the fate of the galaxy itself. The atmosphere inside the derelict station was stifling, thick with the scent of old, rusted metal and the remnants of long-dead systems. Every step echoed through the empty halls, amplifying the haunting silence that had claimed the station for years, decades perhaps. Alina Voss's boots made no sound against the cold, smooth floor as she led the way, her hand resting on the hilt of her sidearm, ready for anything. Lieutenant Kale, ever the cautious officer, moved behind her, scanning every corner with his rifle raised. The rest of the team, a small but capable group of soldiers, followed in tight formation, their eyes darting to the shadows, expecting danger at any moment. The signal had led them this far, but it wasn't enough to quell the unease gnawing at them. Something about this place was off, and the unsettling silence was beginning to feel like an omen. "Captain, we're close," Kale said, his voice barely above a whisper, though there was no need for stealth. The station had been abandoned long ago, and the only presence here was the one they had brought with them. Ahead, the flickering lights revealed a large central chamber, its walls lined with intricate alien symbols that none of them recognized. At the center of the room stood a massive terminal, its surface cracked and covered in dust, but still operational. On the terminal's display screen, an image appeared, a star map, ancient yet precise, showing the galaxy in its entirety. There, in the farthest reaches of known space, a series of anomalies were highlighted in bright red. "Is that?" Kale began, his eyes narrowing as he examined the map. "The Voidborn." Alina's voice was low, a chill creeping into her tone. "It's their territory. Why would someone send a distress signal from here? This place was abandoned. No one has set foot in this system for years." Lieutenant Cora, a sharp-eyed officer, interjected, her fingers brushing over the symbols as if trying to decipher them. "There's something more to this. Someone didn't send the signal," Voss said, her gaze hardening. It was the station itself. The realization hit her like a shockwave. This station wasn't just a relic. It was an ancient relay, built by a race long extinct, perhaps even before the formation of the galaxy's current civilizations. The distress signal, encoded in a pattern that resonated with an eerie precision, wasn't just a cry for help. It was a warning. A sudden hum from the terminal interrupted her thoughts. The screen flickered, then displayed a single word, "Voidborn." "Captain," Kale warned, his voice trembling with an edge of urgency. "We're not alone." As the last word appeared on the screen, the room plunged into darkness. The hum of the station's systems died, leaving behind a tense, suffocating silence. Alina's heart raced as her hand instinctively went to her communicator. "Status report," she barked, but there was no response. Before anyone could react, the walls of the chamber began to tremble, and a low, resonating growl echoed from the darkness. It was unlike anything they had ever heard, a sound that vibrated through their very bones. Something huge, was stirring within the station. The air grew colder, and a deep, oppressive presence settled over them. It wasn't just the Voidborn that haunted this place. It was something far older, something ancient, something that had been waiting. Suddenly, from the far side of the room, a dark, shifting figure emerged. It was massive, its silhouette barely visible in the shadows, but its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light. Alina's pulse quickened, her hand gripping her weapon as the figure slowly approached, its movements predatory and deliberate. "Get ready," she whispered, her voice a hardened steel. "We've found what we came for. But now, we fight to survive." The crew's weapons snapped to attention as the figure drew closer, its form coalescing from the shadows into a hulking, armored creature. The Voidborn had arrived. But this wasn't just any Voidborn. This one radiated an aura of malice and dark power. It was their leader, Niall, and he had come for more than just Earth's remnants. He had come for the heart of the cosmos. "Captain Voss," Niall's voice rumbled, low and ancient. "You walk into the depths of oblivion, but you will not leave. The galaxy will remain broken, and Earth will be no more." A deep, cold laugh echoed through the chamber, and the temperature dropped even further. Alina's mind raced. They had uncovered a far darker plot than they could have ever imagined, one that would threaten not just their survival, but the fate of the entire galaxy. They were no longer just hunting for the heart. They were fighting for their very lives. Captain Alina Voss gripped her weapon tightly, the cold bite of fear pressing against her resolve. The creature before them, towering and bathed in shadow, radiated an energy that felt like the void itself. It was Nihil, the void-born warlord, his name whispered across the remnants of the galaxy as a harbinger of ruin. His glowing violet eyes bore into Alina, his armored form pulsing with power that defied the natural order. "Stand together," Alina barked, her voice cutting through the suffocating dread that filled the chamber. Her team rallied, forming a defensive line as the oppressive aura pressed down on them. Nihil stepped closer, each movement deliberate, his presence as much a psychological weapon as it was physical. The lights flickered, and a deep rumble emanated from the walls of the station, as though the very structure of the place groaned under the weight of his power. "You cannot restore what has been shattered," Nihil said, his voice echoing like distant thunder. "The galaxy is broken by design, Captain. Let it collapse into the silence it was meant for." Alina squared her shoulders, refusing to yield to the despair creeping at the edges of her mind. "Broken or not, this galaxy is still ours, and we won't let you decide its fate." Nihil chuckled, a low, resonating sound. "You think your defiance matters. Humanity clings to hope like a child clutches a fading light, but you've already lost. The heart of the cosmos is beyond your reach." The mention of the heart caused a ripple of unease through the team. Alina narrowed her eyes. "Then why are you here, Nihil? If it's beyond our reach, why do you bother showing your face?" For the first time, the warlord hesitated, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his glowing eyes. Then, without another word, he extended a clawed hand, and the room itself seemed to twist and warp. Shadows came alive, coiling and writhing, forming into grotesque shapes that screeched and howled. Voidborn drones, manifestations of darkness itself, descended from the walls, their forms amorphous yet deadly, their eyes glowing with the same malevolent energy as their masters. "Fight! Focus fire!" Alina shouted as the team opened fire, their weapons lighting up the darkened chamber with bursts of searing energy. The first wave of drones surged forward, shrieking as they clashed with the humans. Kale fired relentlessly, his precision cutting through their shifting forms. Lieutenant Cora launched a plasma grenade, the explosion illuminating the chamber in a burst of fiery light. The void-born drones recoiled, some dissipating into nothingness, but more emerged from the walls, their numbers seemingly endless. Alina fought her way toward the central terminal, firing at every drone that crossed her path. Amid the chaos, she noticed something, a faint glow emanating from the console. The star map flickered back to life, and a new symbol appeared on the screen, a pulsating icon marking the location deep within uncharted space. "Kale, cover me," she shouted, diving toward the terminal. Kale spun, gunning down another drone as Alina reached the console. Her fingers flew across the controls, her mind racing. The map was trying to tell her something. As she worked, Nihil's voice boomed over the battle. "You cannot stop what has already begun, Captain. The heart's power is mine, and soon, all of existence will kneel before the void." Alina ignored him, her focus locked on the map. The glowing icon expanded, revealing coordinates and a cryptic phrase etched in ancient script. "The luminal gate shall lead the way, Captain." Kel's voice snapped her attention back to the fight. Nihil himself was advancing now, his massive form cutting through the chaos like a predator stalking its prey. "Fall back," Alina ordered, uploading the coordinates to her wrist console. "We've got what we came for." The team regrouped, retreating toward the docking bay under a hail of voidborn attacks. Cora lay down covering fire, her rifle blazing as they moved. Alina glanced over her shoulder, her eyes meeting Nihil's one last time. His expression was unreadable, but his glowing eyes burned with a silent promise. This is far from over. As the team boarded the Nighthawk, The station trembled violently, as if the darkness itself was tearing it apart. The ship's engines roared to life, propelling them away just as the derelict station collapsed into a swirling vortex of shadow. Breathing heavily, Alina slumped into her command chair. The cryptic coordinates burned in her mind, along with the phrase, "The luminal gate." "Set course," she commanded, her voice firm despite the chaos still fresh in her veins. "Whatever this gate is, it's our only lead." The Nighthawk surged forward into the void, leaving the broken station, and the nightmare they had just survived behind. But the fight was only beginning. The heart of the cosmos waited, and with it, the fate of the galaxy. The Nighthawk hurtled through the inky blackness of uncharted space, its engines humming with a steady rhythm. The cryptic coordinates displayed on the navigation console drew them toward a region of the galaxy that had been avoided for centuries, an area known only as the Abyssal Expanse. The team worked in tense silence, the memory of their confrontation with Nihil still fresh in their minds. Captain Alina Voss sat in the command chair, her gaze fixed on the holographic display projecting the star map. The phrase, "the luminal gate," shall lead the way echoed in her thoughts. What was this gate? Was it a physical structure, a beacon, or something far more elusive? Entering the Abyssal Expanse, Lieutenant Kale reported, his voice breaking the quiet. "Sensors are picking up strange readings." "Define strange, Lieutenant," Alina said, leaning forward. Kale frowned as he studied the data. Energy signatures fluctuating across multiple spectrums. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's almost as if space itself is bending and warping." "That's comforting," Lieutenant Cora muttered from her station. "Remind me why we're heading straight into what sounds like a death trap." "Because it's the only lead we have," Alina replied, her voice steely. "If this gate has anything to do with the heart of the cosmos, we have to find it. Before Nihil does." As the ship drew closer to the coordinates, the view outside the bridge transformed. The stars seemed to stretch and twist, forming spirals of light and shadow that flickered like dying flames. In the distance, a massive structure began to materialize, silhouetted against the eerie glow of a nebula. "There it is," Alina whispered, her breath catching. The luminal gate was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was a vast, ring-like construct, its surface etched with intricate patterns that pulsed with an otherworldly light. The structure seemed to hum with energy, the sound faint but resonant, vibrating through the Nighthawk's hull. "This thing is ancient," Kale said, his voice tinged with awe. "Older than anything we've ever encountered. It's not just a gate, it's a power source, a nexus." "Do you think it's connected to the heart?" Cora asked. "Only one way to find out," Alina said. "Bring us closer." As the Nighthawk approached, the gate came alive. Streams of light arsed across its surface, converging at its center. A swirling vortex began to form, its core glowing with a radiant energy that defied explanation. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal," Kale said. "It's faint, but it's coming from inside the gate." Alina's heart raced. "Can you decode it?" Kale nodded, his hands flying across the console. Moments later, a distorted voice crackled through the speakers. "To those who seek the heart, beware the darkness within." The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Great," Cora said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Another ominous warning. Just what we needed." "Prepare the shuttle," Alina ordered. "We're going through." Kale turned to her, his expression grim. "Captain, are you sure? We have no idea what's on the other side of that gate." "We don't have a choice," Alina said firmly. "If the heart of the cosmos is the key to restoring the galaxy, then we have to take the risk. And if Nihil is after it, we can't let him beat us to it." The team suited up, their nerves taut as they boarded the shuttle. As the small craft detached from the Nighthawk, Alina glanced back at her ship, her crew's faces a mix of determination and fear. "Hold on," she said as the shuttle entered the vortex. The moment they crossed the threshold, reality seemed to shatter around them. light and darkness swirled together, the boundaries of time and space dissolving into chaos. Alina gritted her teeth, gripping the controls as the shuttle was pulled deeper into the vortex. Then, as suddenly as it began, the turbulence ceased. The shuttle emerged into a vast, ethereal expanse. Floating islands of crystal and rock drifted in the void, connected by streams of shimmering light. At the center of it all was a massive structure, a cathedral-like fortress that radiated the same energy as the gate. "That must be it," Alina said, her voice hushed. "The heart of the cosmos," Kale breathed. But their awe was short-lived. From the shadows of the fortress, dark shapes began to emerge. Voidborn drones, dozens of them, their eyes glowing with the same malevolence as Nail's. "They're already here," Cora said, readying her weapon. "Then we'll fight," Alina said, determination hardening her voice. "No turning back now." The battle for the heart of the cosmos had begun. The shuttle touched down on one of the crystalline platforms that orbited the heart of the cosmos like silent sentinels. The crew disembarked cautiously, weapons drawn, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Around them, streams of light and energy pulsed through the floating landscape, casting an ethereal glow on the alien terrain. "Stay sharp," Captain Alina Voss said, her voice low but commanding. "Those voidborn drones won't hesitate to attack." Lieutenant Kale scanned the surroundings with a handheld device. "The energy readings here are off the charts. It's like this entire place is alive." "And it's not happy we're here," Lieutenant Cora muttered, pointing toward the advancing drones. The voidborn moved with mechanical precision, their sleek, black frames glinting as they reflected the swirling light of the expanse. "Form a perimeter." Alina barked, taking position behind a jagged crystal formation. The first wave of drones opened fire, their weapons emitting sharp, crackling bolts of dark energy. The crew retaliated, their weapons blazing as they engaged the enemy in a desperate firefight. Kale crouched beside Alina, his focus split between returning fire and analyzing the drones. "These models are different from the ones we fought before. Stronger, faster. Nail's been busy." Alina gritted her teeth. "Then we'll have to be smarter. Cora, can you find a weak point?" "Working on it," Cora shouted as she ducked behind cover, her fingers flying across her portable hacking module. A moment later, she grinned. "Got it. Target the energy cores, center of the chest, just below the neck." The crew adjusted their aim, and one by one, the drones began to fall. But for every drone they destroyed, 2 more seemed to emerge from the shadows. "This isn't sustainable," Kale said grimly. "We'll run out of ammo before we make it to the heart." "We need to push forward," Alina said. "If we stay here, we're sitting ducks. Move out." The team advanced, weaving through the crystalline terrain as they fought off the relentless onslaught. Each step brought them closer to the heart, the massive fortress looming ahead like a silent titan. As they neared the structure, a new threat emerged. The ground beneath them trembled, and from the light streams erupted towering figures made of pure energy. These ethereal guardians, humanoid in form but massive and otherworldly, moved with a deliberate grace. Their eyes glowed with the same light as the gate, their presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "What are those things?" Cora asked, her voice laced with panic. "Some kind of defense mechanism," Kale said, scanning them. "They're not voidborn. They're part of this place." The lead guardian raised a hand, and a resonant voice filled the air, speaking in a language none of them recognized. The words vibrated through their bones, a mix of warning and challenge. Alina stepped forward, lowering her weapon slightly. "We're not here to destroy," she said, her voice firm but calm. "We're here to restore. The galaxy is dying, and we need the heart to save it." The guardian hesitated, its glowing eyes fixed on her. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, a deep guttural laugh echoed through the expanse. The light dimmed, and from the shadows emerged Nail, his form crackling with dark energy. "Touching," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. But the heart doesn't belong to you. It belongs to me. Elena turned to face him, her jaw tightening. Over my dead body. Nihil smirked, raising a hand to summon more drones. If that's what it takes, Captain. The Guardians, sensing the dark presence, roared in unison. The ground shook as they turned their focus to Nihil and his forces, their energy weapons flaring to life. Now's our chance, Kale shouted. While they're distracted, Elena nodded. Move. Get to the heart. With the Guardians and Nihil locked in combat, the team sprinted toward the fortress. But the closer they got, the stronger the pull of the heart's energy became, tugging at their minds and bodies. Elena, Cora shouted, her voice distant and distorted. Something's happening to me. Elena glanced back to see her crewmates struggling, their movements sluggish as the heart's overwhelming power began to affect them. We're almost there, she yelled, her own vision blurring. Don't stop now. The fortress doors loomed ahead, their surface glowing with ancient runes. Elena reached out, her hand trembling as she pressed against the barrier. With a burst of light, the doors began to open, revealing the heart of the cosmos, a massive, pulsating sphere of energy, suspended in the air like a living star. Its beauty was blinding, its power palpable. But standing between them and the heart was Nihil, his eyes burning with triumph. Welcome, he said, spreading his arms wide, to the end of your journey. The heart of the cosmos radiated an overwhelming energy, its pulsating light filling the cavernous chamber. Elena and her crew stood frozen, the gravity of their situation weighing on them like an invisible force. Nihil loomed before them, his form wreathed in dark energy that hissed and spat in defiance of the heart's radiance. Your journey ends here, Nihil said, his voice reverberating through the chamber. This power is mine. I will shake the galaxy in my image, and nothing will stop me. Elena steadied her breathing, her weapon raised but shaking slightly under the immense pressure of the heart's energy. You don't care about restoring the galaxy, she said. You just want to bend it to your will. You're no savior, Nihil. You're a tyrant. Nihil smirked, taking a step closer. And what are you, Captain? A fragile human trying to grasp power far beyond your comprehension. The heart will destroy you before it ever lets you wield it. Kale, despite the oppressive force of the heart's energy, managed to whisper, He's stalling, Captain. He's waiting for us to falter. Elena tightened her grip on her weapon. Then let's not give him the chance. With a swift command, the team split into action. Kale and Cora circled to the left and right, flanking Nihil, while Elena advanced directly toward the heart. Nihil responded instantly, raising his hand to summon a wave of void-born drones from the shadows. The drones swarmed toward the crew, their black forms contrasting against the brilliant light of the heart. Elena fired into the mass of enemies, her aim precise despite the strain on her body. Kale and Cora provided covering fire, their weapons blazing as they fought to keep Nihil's forces at bay. Elena, Cora shouted, he's drawing power from the heart. We can't let him connect to it fully. Elena glanced toward Nihil and saw the dark tendrils of energy extending from his form, intertwining with the heart's luminous streams. His power was growing by the second, the room trembling under the sheer force of it. We have to sever his connection. Elena yelled. Kale, can you disrupt the energy flow? Kale ducked behind a crystal formation, rapidly scanning the heart's energy patterns with his device. I'll need time, he called back. Keep him off me. Elena and Cora redoubled their efforts, focusing their fire on Nihil. But he was no longer simply a man. He was becoming something more, something monstrous. His form twisted and grew, the dark energy consuming him as he let out a guttural roar. You cannot stop me. Nihil bellowed, his voice distorted. I will become the new god of this galaxy. Kel's voice crackled over the comms. I've got it. There's a harmonic frequency in the heart's energy. If I can amplify it, it'll disrupt Nihil's connection, but it'll also destabilize the entire chamber. Do it, Elena commanded without hesitation. We'll figure out the rest. Kale began transmitting the frequency, his device emitting a piercing sound that resonated through the chamber. Niall screamed in fury as the dark tendrils connecting him to the heart began to fray and snap. The heart's light flared brighter, its energy becoming chaotic and unpredictable. The ground shook violently, and shards of the crystalline walls began to break away. Elena pushed forward, dodging falling debris as she closed the distance to the heart. She could feel its pull now, a seductive whisper in the back of her mind, promising unimaginable power. "Captain," Cora shouted, "the heart, it's reacting to you." Elena hesitated, the whisper growing louder. She could see it now, a vision of the galaxy, restored and vibrant, with humanity at its center. It was everything she had dreamed of, everything she had fought for. But the cost. "Elena, don't listen to it," Kale yelled. "It's not meant for one person to control." Elena's hand hovered just inches from the heart, the light bathing her in its warmth. Behind her, Niall screamed in rage, his form disintegrating as the harmonic frequency severed his bond completely. The heart's energy surged, the chamber shaking violently as its power reached a critical point. Elena made her decision. She reached out, not to claim the heart, but to stabilize it, to guide its energy, not wield it. The light enveloped her completely, and she let out a cry as the heart's power coursed through her. "Elena!" Kale and Cora shouted in unison, watching helplessly as their captain became one with the light. The chamber exploded with brilliance, the heart's energy expanding outward in a wave that rippled through the galaxy. Niall's screams were drowned out, his form consumed by the light. And then there was silence. When the light faded, Elena stood alone at the heart's center, her eyes glowing with its energy. She turned to her crew, her voice calm but resolute. "The heart isn't broken anymore," she said, "but the galaxy's healing has only just begun." The crew of the Starhound stood in stunned silence as the chamber settled around them. The once chaotic energy of the heart of the cosmos had transformed into a calm, rhythmic pulse. Elena stood at its center, her figure illuminated by a faint ethereal glow. Her presence felt different now, larger yet grounded, like she had become something more while still remaining their captain. "Elena," Kale called hesitantly, stepping closer. "Are you?" Elena turned, her glowing eyes meeting his. She smiled faintly, her voice steady but tinged with an unfamiliar resonance. "I'm still me, Kale, but I've changed." The heart didn't just heal. It shared a part of itself with me. I can feel the galaxy now, its fractures, its pain. And I know what we have to do next. The weight of her words settled heavily on the crew. The galaxy was in disarray, and the heart's restoration was only the beginning. Niall had been defeated, but his actions had left scars that would take generations to mend. "We need to move quickly," Elena continued. "The heart's energy is stabilizing, but it's fragile. It needs to be anchored, or its power could unravel everything we just fought for." Cora approached cautiously, her expression a mix of awe and concern. "Anchored? What does that mean?" "It means the heart's energy has to be distributed," Elena explained. "Its power is too vast for one place to contain. I can guide it, but we'll need to repair the ancient conduits that once spread its energy across the galaxy. Without them, the balance will collapse again." Kale frowned, pulling up his datapad. "The conduits, they're ancient relics. Most of them are either destroyed or lost. Even if we find them, repairing them could take years." Elena's glowing eyes narrowed in determination. "Then we'd better start now. The longer we wait, the more unstable the heart becomes. And if it destabilizes..." She let the thought hang in the air, the consequences too dire to articulate. A sudden rumble echoed through the chamber, and the crew instinctively braced themselves. Outside, the Voidborn remnants still lurked, their master destroyed but their programming intact. They were converging on the chamber, drawn by the heart's energy like moths to a flame. "Captain," Cora said, her voice sharp, "we've got incoming. Lots of them." Elena nodded. "Then we hold them off. The heart is too vulnerable to leave unguarded." She turned to Kale. "You'll lead the effort to find and repair the conduits. Use the data we've gathered and plot a course to the nearest one. Cora, you're with me. We'll secure the heart until the Starhound is ready to depart." Kale hesitated, his eyes flickering to the glowing form of his captain. "Elena, are you sure you can handle this?" "I'm fine, Kale," she interrupted gently. "The heart's power is overwhelming, but it's not consuming me. Not yet. We don't have time for doubt. We have a galaxy to fix." Kale nodded reluctantly, understanding the urgency. "I'll get started on the conduits. But Captain, be careful. That power, whatever it's done to you, it's not without cost." Elena placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm. "I know, Kale, but this is the cost of leadership, and I'm willing to pay it." The crew sprang into action. Kale raced to the Starhound to begin charting a path, while Cora and Elena fortified their position in the heart's chamber. Outside, the Voidborn grew louder, their mechanical cries echoing through the caverns. As Elena prepared for the inevitable battle, she felt the heart's whispers in her mind, urging her forward. For the first time, she truly understood the enormity of the task ahead, not just defeating enemies, but rebuilding a galaxy shattered by war and neglect. The Voidborn surged into the chamber, a tide of dark metal and glowing red eyes. Elena stood at the forefront, her weapon ready, her voice steady. "This galaxy may be broken," she said, her voice carrying over the din, "but humanity doesn't give up. We rebuild, we restore, we fight." The heart's light flared brighter as she stepped forward, meeting the Voidborn head-on. The Voidborn descended upon the chamber in a relentless wave, their metallic forms clattering and shrieking as they closed in on the heart of the cosmos. Elena stood at the forefront, her glowing eyes fixed on the oncoming horde. Behind her, Cora took position, her rifle aimed and ready. "Cora," Elena called over her shoulder, her voice calm but commanding. "Hold the line. No matter what happens, we can't let them reach the heart." Cora nodded, determination etched into her face. "Understood, Captain. Let's give them hell." The battle began in a blinding flurry of light and sound. Cora's rifle spat bursts of energy, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. Elena, meanwhile, moved with an almost otherworldly grace, her connection to the heart enhancing her reflexes and instincts. Bolts of golden energy erupted from her outstretched hands, tearing through the Voidborn with devastating force. Despite their efforts, the Voidborn were relentless. For every drone they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The chamber shook with the weight of the battle, debris falling from the ceiling as the heart's energy pulsed erratically. "Elena," Cora shouted, ducking behind a fallen column for cover. "There's too many of them. We can't keep this up forever." Elena gritted her teeth, feeling the strain of the heart's power coursing through her. It was intoxicating but dangerous, like walking a razor's edge. She could feel its whispers growing louder, urging her to unleash its full potential. "We don't need forever," Elena replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Just long enough for Kel to do his part." As if on cue, Kel's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, I've located the first conduit. It's dormant, but the energy signatures match the heart's. If we can reactivate it, it'll stabilize the heart's output and give us a fighting chance." "Good work, Kale," Elena said. "But we got a situation here. The Voidborn heir." Before she could finish, a massive Voidborn mech burst into the chamber, its towering frame bristling with weapons. It let out a deafening roar, its crimson eyes locking onto the heart. "Elena," Cora shouted, firing at the mech's exposed joints. "That thing's going straight for the heart." Elena's mind raced. The heart's energy could destroy the mech in an instant, but the cost could be catastrophic. If she pushed the heart too far, it might destabilize entirely, undoing everything they had fought for. "No, She whispered to herself, steeling her resolve. I won't let this galaxy break again. Drawing upon the heart's energy, Elena leaped onto the mech, her glowing hand slamming into its armored shell. The heart's power surged through her, searing the mech's circuits and reducing it to a molten heap. The effort left her staggering, her vision swimming as the heart's whispers grew deafening. But she forced herself to focus, turning to face the remaining Voidborn. Enough, she said, her voice resonating with the heart's power. She raised her hands, and a wave of golden light erupted from her, sweeping through the chamber. The Voidborn froze mid-attack, their forms disintegrating as the light consumed them. When the light faded, the chamber was silent. The Voidborn were gone, and the heart pulsed steadily, its energy finally stabilizing. Elena. Cor approached cautiously, her weapon lowered. Are you okay? Elena turned to her glowing eyes dimming slightly. I'm fine, she said, though her voice carried a weariness that hinted at the toll the battle had taken. But we're not done yet. Cal's voice came through the comms again, urgent but hopeful. Captain, the first conduit is online. The energy is stabilizing, but we'll need to activate the others to fully restore the balance. Elena nodded, a small smile breaking through her exhaustion. Then we have our mission. One step at a time, we'll rebuild this galaxy. As the crew regrouped and prepared to depart, Elena took one last look at the heart of the cosmos. It pulsed softly, its light a reminder of both the challenges they had overcome and the work that lay ahead. The galaxy was still fractured, but humanity had proven its resilience. Together, they would restore what was broken and forge a new future, one guided by hope, unity, and the unyielding spirit of the human race. As the Starhound lifted off, Elena stood on the bridge, her glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. This is just the beginning, she said quietly, her voice filled with quiet determination. Let's show the galaxy what we're made of. The Starhound surged forward into the vast expanse of space, carrying with it the promise of a brighter tomorrow.